Hello, everyone, and welcome to the InstructLab CLI community meeting. Today is August 22nd, 2024, and we don't have a lot on the agenda today, so I'm going to ask people to feel free to just jump in after we go through these two items. The first one is we are working our way through the 0.19 milestone. We are refining it, we're removing stuff, we're adding stuff. If you think you have an issue that should be resolved for 0.19, feel free to link it to this agenda item, and I'll take a look at them afterwards if they're not already in the 0.19 milestone, because we're trying to get a hold on like what needs to go in, what's a major bug fix, what's a feature, because we're kind of aiming for stability with this release, given that the previous release was a huge change as compared to 17.1. So we're looking to fix some things that we maybe missed in 0.18. But also, as a little side note, we have, can someone else link the agenda doc so I don't have to switch my windows for BJ? We've also released 18.1 and 18.2 since 18. These are just minor C-stream releases that just had some fixes that were necessary for things like taxonomy diff and STG, reading the taxonomy properly and stuff like that, minor bug fixes. So we're going to finish going through that, and when we're done going through that later today, my hope is to label some of the issues as either good first issue or help wanted. If we think there's some things that community members could pick up, we definitely want to do that, because the InstructLab team can't do everything in the milestone. If you've taken a look at it, the milestone's kind of huge. That's why we're going through and refining it. But yeah, that's just where we've been going. Will 19 also include updated releases of sub-projects? That's a good question. So the way that I don't know who put that in there, but the way that our requirements works is that if the sub-projects do a release, we automatically pick up the newest version. So we try to coordinate pretty well to make sure that those libraries don't release anything that breaks us or breaks the CLI in any way. But yeah, so if you take a look at those libraries and if they have released since whatever version you have installed, they should install the newest version. We will need a release of SDG to use the matching YAML parsing code. That is true. Who is that writing that? If they want to raise their hand or speak about this a little bit.
Martin has his hand up.
Yeah, Marty, you can go first.
Yeah, just a quick one. Sorry, I missed last week. There was talk around some slight instability around the Mac, and I know Mac is, it's more for the smoke tests and so forth. But are there actually raised issues that need to be worked on, or what's the story with it at the moment? I can give it a good trash into when I get a chance as well. But is there issues out there, Charlie, and is there labels and stuff on it, or what's the story?
Yeah, so we have to finish going through the milestone, but from what we already have gone through, there are a bunch of macOS things, namely like the pathing issue is a big one that we want to solve for 19. Because with the persistent storage and basically with storing InstructLab stuff in a central location on every machine rather than in your working directory, we introduced some weirdness with macOS where it puts everything in application support, which is kind of a weird place for things to live. So we are fixing that in 19. Definitely, that's one of our biggest things. And we're planning on doing, or at least I'm planning on doing, just a run through of the macOS workflow as well. Just on my machine, just to make sure I don't see anything that's glaringly wrong. And we're going to file bugs and fix those as well. So this is primarily a stability release for things like macOS and for laptop support where we can, because we know that 18 was a big like GPU, dedicated GPU focused release. So we're hoping to stabilize the laptop use cases in this one as well.
Yeah, because like there's a big thing around here as well, and the GPUs and CPUs are on the Mac. Like primarily, Mac is GPU first class, really. All right, if you're off an M1 or an MX, it isn't. But generally, from day one, it's always been towards GPU. So Yeah, I'll give a trash through and I'll see. I haven't done it for a while, so I'll give a trash through and see if anything comes up or on the builds and stuff like that. So yeah, okay,
Cool.
thank you.
So one thing I'm working on, just as a side note there, you'll notice that when you run things that we introduce these things called training profiles, which are really just for right now, they're for NVIDIA like server grade GPUs, just so people who are running on those workloads had a way to sanely run training without having to specify like 60 different command line flags. I'm working on expanding the idea of a profile in general to things like consumer GPUs like the RTX like 4070, 8090, and even the 30 series, and also Mac OS, because I know you're right, like the M series chips have pretty substantial integrated GPUs, and they can use the training library. So the way that we have it coded now is that if you're on a Mac, use the MLX path that has existed in InstructLab since the beginning of InstructLab, or like the first couple of weeks. I want to expose the path that shells out to this new training library we have, because that training library supports MPS, which, as most people know, is like the just the PyTorch like metal performance shaders device, which is pretty performant as compared to MLX. So I think exposing that in 19 is not too hard of a goal that we should probably do, just so folks don't have to use MLX if they don't want to. They can take advantage of the training configs and stuff like that. So that's something that's on my roadmap. I don't know if I have that reflected in the milestone yet, but I'm planning on writing that down today.
Yeah, I know I did a review of your initial design doc on the profiles, and I gave some feedback on it at the time. My biggest thing around that is, and I can look again, see what the update is, was around, concentrating on what, your resources are, as opposed to giving it names. Well, I suppose you can give it t-shirt names if you want, but the big thing is around the resources and stuff like that, and what's available, rather than just say, things are going to run on a Mac or stuff like that, And I think what you're saying there is going to the MPS and stuff, it'd be great if you can do that. So I think that'll be all good parts of it. So look forward to seeing that.
Cool. Yeah, so I've filed a new issue. That dev doc is pretty out of date, and we don't really have a lot of, I want to say, a lot of speed on the dev doc review process. So the way that we've been handling things recently is just filing like enhancement issues with like the description of how the person thinks the design should look, and then we have like conversations on there. In the 19 milestone, you'll find a issue. I can find the link after this conversation, but it's like implement profiles in iLab, I think is what the name of it is. It's in the 19 milestone. And in there, I describe a new way that I'm thinking of it. I've actually already started implementing this, and it's really clean and nice, especially if you have an NVIDIA GPU. There's really nice ways to detect like how much VRAM you have and just like auto choose the best training configuration for the user. And on Mac OS, shelling out to the new library as well. So I'm really looking forward to however that turns out. And I'm hoping that gets into 19, because I think it'll help the user experience a lot.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Charlie.
Yep. BJ, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was the one that was typing the stuff in about the sub projects. In particular, right, there was the coordinated changes to use the new YAML parsing. It's in the CLI for taxonomy diff, and it's also in the SDG project for the data generation. So we should make sure that we have a new release of SDG that we pick up for 0.19 of the CLI to make sure that we're consistently parsing YAML.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for letting us know. I just wrote that down just so we know to actually do that. I might just bump the version itself to the min version just to be safe, because I think the way that the requirements sometimes works is if the requirement's already satisfied on someone's machine, it doesn't always pull the most recent version.
Right.
So I might bump the minimum.
Right. I just wasn't aware of a plan to publish an update to the SDG project to PyPy. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah, I'll talk to Akansha and folks about that as well, because I know that they're the ones that manage the bumping of the actual library, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal, probably.
Yeah, I can cut a release. I'm just waiting on one other PR to go through. So if we get that So we got your one through this morning, BJ, which was important. But there's another one as well where I don't know what his real name is, but his GitHub handle is Make Linux. So I'm working on GitHub handles. So
I think that's Costa.
Costa. Okay, sorry. Sometimes you get caught with handles. Anyway, sorry about that, Costa. So I'm looking at Costa's one, and it is around where there's just a bit of playing around with the params and dumping params that are no longer needed from the Generate API, Generate Data API, or the Generate API inside an SDG. So let's try and get that in. We can kind of release either this evening or tomorrow.
Cool. Sounds good. I see the next one is about a bug with training and testing. I just took a look at this. We can discuss it. But Carol, I see you put your hand up.
I put it in, but it's really Ahmed brought it up during the office hours earlier today, and just wondering if it's related to the Mac issues, because it's on the Mac and it's not finding adapter files. Or I'll let y'all comment on it, or Ahmed perhaps.
And I'm here as well. So actually, yes. So I'm having a Mac M1 Max. So I'm not sure if it's related or not. So the training, actually, I showed it to Carol in the morning. So the training itself completed, and then once I try to proceed, it's trying to test the behavior before the training, and it's not able to find the JSON-L file.
Yeah, JD.
Yeah, I think, so this is a bit of I think it's a bit of an awkward transition between like the newer training code that's been implemented versus like what runs on Mac. Because on Mac, it uses the MLX training, and originally the flow for the Mac training should be that after you train, it spits out the adapter file in like an intermediate folder that it creates. And then when you do iLab model convert, it's supposed to pick up that adapter and fuse it with the train checkpoint that it releases. But I could see that it's trying to look for the checkpoints in where it would originally be stored if you're doing like the library training mechanism, because it's in the application support checkpoints folder, and that's not where like the Mac OS training would be emitting the adapters file, which was implemented before all of this. So I think I can see like where the issue is, and I can probably raise a quick fix to it if it's blocking you. But essentially, like the whole Mac OS training part needs to kind of be relooked at, and like Charlie said, we'll try to move towards MPS, and that might change the entire Mac flow anyway. So, but yeah, thanks for raising that, because I think the Mac training side of it hasn't gotten as much attention lately.
Yes,
I also think a quick workaround for you. The adapter file definitely got put somewhere. I don't know if there's a flag. So training succeeded, right? You said?
Yeah, the training succeeded, yes.
Okay, so yeah, there's an adapter file flag that if you know where the adapter file is on your system, if you just like look around in the working directory, you could probably pass it in to there. But as JD said, a quick fix is probably the best solution for us to release.
Yeah. So what you can, like Charlie said, what you can probably try to do is iLab model convert takes an adapter file. And when you do iLab model convert -- adapter, if you see, you might have like an intermediate folder that says -mlx-q, something like that. And like that usually gets cleared up in the convert as a part of the cleanup. But if you haven't run convert yet, like those files should still be there. So you could try iLab model convert -- adapter and then give it the path to like an NPZ file in like one of those -mlx-q folders that might have been created in your working directory. And if you supply that, then it should be able to convert, like go ahead and do the model fusing the adapter that you give it with the checkpoints already present in that location. And then it should go ahead and convert and quantize and give out a GGUF. At least that's the expected workflow. So if you were to hit different issues in that workflow, then you could raise it again upstream and we could take a look at that. But that should, I would try that to unblock you for now.
Okay, so Jadip, are you available that sometime we just go on together and we try this approach which you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can ping me on the
On Slack maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm writing up an issue right now, or an enhancement, I guess I should say, to track for 19 switching or at least enabling users to use the MPS in the training library. The way we should probably do it is in the backend flag. I think I implemented this before, but then we had to switch to these libraries, so it kind of got put on the back burner. But some sort of -- backend flag enabling people to use MLX or MPS is probably the best way to do it. I mean, I would always prefer to just use MPS just because we're going to be maintaining that code more because it's in the library. But I know that a lot of people prefer MLX because it's more directly supported by Apple. So it's kind of a weird situation where I think the best way to do it is probably to give people a flag with some sort of default. But I don't know, JD, if you have an opinion on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably be more inclined towards just having one training backend for Mac, either MPS or MLX, and mostly MPS, because I think it's unnecessary. It seems like a little bit unnecessary overhead to add a flag to that personally and like give that extra choice. And that like extra choice is good if you know what you're looking for, but more than likely the average laptop use case doesn't need to be exposed to that additional piece of meta information of what backend is running. And the other reason is MLX, the way it's implemented, is not very easy to consume, because right now what we're doing is it's a bunch of scripts that have been kind of ported over from like the MLX project. And it's not like a nice little API that you can hook into and consume properly. So and the training library is that, and so is MPS. It's written as an actual library that can be consumed. So we again have the split implementation of training backend specific to Mac. One is programmatic, one is script based. So it's kind of messy to keep going forward with both. I would probably be more inclined towards gradually phasing like MLX out if we know that MPS implementation is in a good place that can be supported.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think maybe like a hidden flag then, at least for a couple of versions, that defaults to MPS, but if you hit some issues, you can do backend MLX. So we won't tell people to use it, but at least until we delete the MLX code or deprecate it, just having something to do with toggle probably makes sense for at least a couple of point versions.
Yeah, I plan to look into this anyway. So I'll try to come up with a way to gradually like fix the MLX issues right now, so it's more functional, and then slowly work on getting MPS to parity and then switch over.
Cool.
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, coming in on that, actually, I have a few points on that. I think in this situation, it would be worth, I know, Charlie, you were saying the design docs sometimes don't move, but I think that's because the goalposts move as well in the fields. I think we've had good progress with design docs. That JD, it might be worth pulling together a design doc on this to say why we want to go over to MPS from MLX. Now, all I can remember is back in the early days of pandemonium, and stuff was coming in from all angles. I still can't remember why MLX came in. All I knew was that, I think it was yourself and other people did great work to pull something in, so we could have had training on Apple, because at the time we were using notebooks in addition. So I suppose it would be worth saying why MLX was chosen, why you want to go over to MPS. If we can use MPS directly, I think that's great, rather than pulling in code, which is never a good idea. And then I think, as Charlie said there, as part of the design, you say, look, we're going to have a handover period where, it gets disabled as the default MLX, but it is in the background in case anyone looks for it. But I don't imagine they will. They're just happy to see training being done on the Mac.
Yeah, exactly. That is the idea, because right now we are kind of in some sense pulling in MLX code because we've had to replicate kind of the scripts and just tidy it up a little bit. So yeah, if MPS is implemented as like a library, I think it's more in line with what you're thinking. And yeah, I also agree that I think users don't really care if we're running MLX or MPS in the background. The history of MLX is more that this was actually the first implementation of any training happening on any laptop, not even just Mac. And that was because like at the time, like we just know that Macs had a guarantee of like like M series Macs had a guarantee of being able to run something because they came with all the Macs standardized and they all have the GPU power, versus Linux support came in a bit later on because it's more diverse and you never guaranteed of like GPU compute available on any laptop. So that's, and MLX is like what like the research side was working with, and they knew that this was optimized for Mac hardware. So that was like a easy direct approach towards getting something working, but it was never meant to be like the long-term solution necessarily. As the project grew, we've kind of seen that, that's probably better long-term sustainable solution. So it, in the process of trying to move in that direction slowly.
Just as a sidebar here, we can continue talking about this if people want, but in my profile work, JD, I'm probably just gonna like hacky enable MPS just for testing purposes, and I can let you know how it goes. Just because I want to like have a training profile for macOS, but that doesn't make any sense if they're not using the library and they're just using MLX. So I might just like delete some code and let it access the training library, because I know, because I accidentally hit it once, that they do have support. It's like, oh, you're on a Mac, we're going to use MPS. So they added some sort of logic for just auto detecting the best device to use. So I think it might just like work if we allow people to access it. But I'll do some rudimentary like sanity checks before we like dive into this as well. Because if it's also going to involve training library changes, then that is a whole nother thing that we have to investigate.
Yeah, I think might be best to like sync at some point soon to go over some of the design aspects, because there's multiple things at play here with the profiles and the MPS support and how to gracefully handle both. I think there's going to be a few gotchas that we can try and preempt just by having like a little brainstorming session at some point. So
Yeah. My goal is to have a working branch for people to just like test what I'm thinking, because it's one thing to describe these sort of UX things and write it out and discuss them that way, but I honestly think that like I already started mocking something up, so like by end of today, honestly, or tomorrow, whatever, I'll have something for people to just like say like, oh, how about we tweak this or change that, because basically I'm taking the train profile approach and making it a lot more straightforward, because with that, it's just like, here's a bunch of files, choose one, and there's not a lot of context. So I'm actually like I'm thinking at least of walking people through from top to bottom. Like, hey, like, do you have any dedicated GPUs? If so, how many? Like, did any of these profiles like kind of match the sort of GPUs you have? Blah, 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 blah. And it's also going to set some stuff with like SDG and serving for the amount of GPUs and stuff like that, and the models. Like if you have a RTX 4090, you could probably use Mistral as your SDG model. You could probably fit, because it's pretty small. But if you have like 8 A100s, you can use Mixtral. Like there's different models for different situations. So I'm going to have something up, basically, is what I'm saying, for you and others to kind of like use as a working branch to push things and change things too. At least that's what I was thinking. So we could kind of collaborate that way, if that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, we can work out the logistics of it. It's fine. Sounds good.
That was kind of the last topic. That was a good conversation though. And I mean, we're going to update the 19 milestone with a bunch of stuff pertaining to training, to profiles, to basically making the UX better for everyone, not just the dedicated GPU folks for 19, because we know that that's something that we have to focus on. Anyone else have any other topics they want to throw in here?
Don't make it better, Charlie. Everyone will start using it then.
Oh yeah, we'll just have like hundreds of bugs, nothing better than a huge backlog of stuff to work on.
Yeah, and a very active community, or a terrible thing to have.
Anyone else want to throw anything in here before we close out today? Nope. Cool. So I'll stop the recording.